So when you think about the year, what comes to mind? For most of us, it's the big four, right? Spring, summer, autumn, winter. But what if I told you there's a way to see the year not in 4 big chunks, but in 72 tiny, beautiful little pieces? Well, today we're going to dive into this incredible traditional Japanese calendar that does just that, and it reveals a relationship with the natural world that is so much deeper and more poetic than you can imagine.
I mean, just look at that comparison. On one side, you have the 4 seasons we all know, but on the other, you've got this amazingly detailed system of 72 microseasons, or ko as they're called in Japanese. Now, each one of these only lasts for about 5 days, and every single one has a name that captures some tiny, specific change happening in nature. It's a completely different way to feel time passing by.
All right, so here's our roadmap for this journey. First, we're going to look at why this whole idea even makes sense in Japan. Then, we'll actually break down how the 72-season calendar works. From there, we'll get into the philosophy behind it, see how it influences everything from food to poetry, and finally, we'll tackle the big question, does this ancient system still matter today? Okay, so first things first, you have to understand that Japan's geography gives it 4 incredibly distinct and dramatic seasons. We're talking cherry blossoms in the spring, lush green summers, vibrant autumns, and heavy, heavy snow in the winter. This clarity, this drama, has really fostered a culture that is just hypersensitive to every little shift in the natural world. It's a deep, deep reverence for the whole cycle of life.
So, that brings us to the system itself. Let's pull back the curtain and look at the nuts and bolts of this amazing way of mapping out the year.
So how in the world do you get from 4 seasons to 72? Well, it's actually this really elegant, logical division. First, you take the year and split it into 24 major periods. These are called sekki, and they mark big solar events, like the beginning of spring or the greater cold. Then, you take each one of those 24 periods and you just divide it into 3 smaller phases. And boom, you've got your 72 microseasons, the ko.
Now, this system has a pretty cool backstory. It originally came from China, but there was a problem. The names and the timings didn't quite line up with Japan's own unique climate. So that's why this moment in 1685 was so important. A court astronomer named Shibukawa Shunkai actually rewrote the calendar, changing the names to reflect the things you could actually see and feel happening in Japan's own landscape. He made it truly Japanese.
And this is where it just gets beautiful. The names themselves are pure poetry. These aren't just dates on a calendar. They're tiny 5-day stories. You have things like East Wind Melts the Ice, which captures that very first signal of spring. Then you get first peach blossoms, and later on, caterpillars become butterflies. And as summer starts to fade, you have cool winds blow. It's like reading a narrative of the year, chapter by chapter.
But here's the thing. This calendar is so much more than just a way to keep time. It's the physical expression of a really deep cultural philosophy. And this is where we need to talk about Kisetsu-kan.
Kisetsu-kan. The literal translation is a sense of the seasons, but that doesn't really capture it. It's more of a cultivated, active awareness. It's about training yourself to appreciate the most subtle changes happening around you, and then finding ways to celebrate them in your daily life. We're talking about the food you eat, the art you look at, even the way you might decorate a room.
And this mindset didn't just appear out of thin air, It's got these incredibly deep roots. You see it in the reverence for nature that's central to both Shinto and Buddhist traditions, which really emphasize ideas like impermanence. And for centuries, rural life meant you were literally connected to the rhythms of planting and harvesting. All these things came together to create a culture that doesn't just watch the seasons go by, it feels them.
Okay, so that's the big idea, the philosophy. But how does it actually pop up in the real world? Well, once you know what you're looking for, you start to see it everywhere.
Let's start with poetry. There's this thing called a kigo, a season word, and it's a non-negotiable part of a traditional haiku. Just one word, like sakura, for cherry blossoms, and it instantly anchors the entire poem in spring. Or even something as simple as the moon. That's a kigo for autumn, because that's when the nights are cool and clear and perfect for moon viewing.
And this isn't some new thing. This poetic focus on the seasons has been a cornerstone of Japanese art for more than 1,000 years. I mean, the very first big poetry collections from way back in the 8th and 10th centuries already had huge sections just for poems about the seasons. This idea is foundational.
All right, now for my favorite part, the food. The way Kisetsu-kan shows up in the kitchen is this concept called shun. This is all about eating ingredients at their absolute peak, that perfect moment when they are the most delicious, the most nutritious, and the easiest to find.
It's about savoring that once-in-a-lifetime taste that only exists for a short window each year.
So in the spring, that means embracing the slight bitterness of new vegetables pushing out of the thawed ground, like bamboo shoots. Summer is for cooling foods, like sweet fish from the river. Autumn, of course, is all about the rich harvest. Think matsutake mushrooms. And in winter, you crave those hearty foods with lots of fat, like yellowtail and crab that have been fattening up in the cold water.
This seasonal awareness is also a huge part of community life. Summer is marked by these huge, vibrant festivals, or matsuri, with all the drumming and dancing. Winter, on the other hand, with its long dark nights, is often celebrated with these dazzling light displays and fireworks. It's how whole communities mark the rhythm of the year together.
Which brings us to a really important question. I mean, this is all fascinating history, beautiful philosophy, but in modern 21st century Japan, does anyone actually use a 72-season calendar anymore?
Well, if you go looking online, you'll find some pretty blunt answers, like this one. No one actually uses this. And the argument is basically that it's just a historical curiosity, that in real life, everyone just uses the same calendar we do. But is that really the whole story?
And here we get to the most important distinction. It's absolutely true that nobody is scheduling their business meetings according to the caterpillars become butterfly season, but focusing on the calendar itself kind of misses the point. The tool may not be in daily use, but the sensibility it created, that deep awareness of Kisetsu-kan, is still very, very much alive.
You see this perfectly in a place like a traditional inn, a ryokan. Everything, the single flower arrangement in the entryway, the scroll hanging on the wall, and especially the multi-course kaiseki meal you're served, every single one of those details is chosen to reflect this exact moment of the year. It's a totally immersive seasonal experience.
What's really wild is that the same deep-seated impulse for detailed observation has found a completely modern scientific outlet. I mean, look at this. This complex diagram is from a scientific paper using machine learning to predict when the cherry blossoms will bloom. It is incredibly detailed, analyzing massive amounts of data on temperature and weather.
When you think about it, the 72-season calendar and a machine learning model are just two different languages. One is poetic, one is scientific. But they are both trying to do the exact same thing, meticulously track and understand the subtle cycles of the natural world around us.
So in the end, the real legacy here isn't a calendar you use for your appointments. It's a mindset. It's an open invitation to just pay a little more attention, to find beauty and meaning in all the small, gradual changes that are happening all around us, all the time. And that leaves us with one last thought. It doesn't matter if you live in Kyoto or Kansas, the natural world is always changing. So the real question this ancient calendar asks us today is this: what are the 72 seasons happening right outside your own window, and what might change if you just started to notice them?